Story 1. The garbage collectors have been on strike in Birmingham for weeks now over pay. Garbage bags are stacked as high as buses. Rats have also become a significant problem. Story 2. Here they have just impeached one president after he declared martial law. Now there is another election coming up. Meanwhile, protests are occurring nearly every day. How crazy is that, you ask? Story 3. People are protesting because a young girl, nicknamed QQ, was raped at her school and justice was not served. When her mother sought help from the police, they were unhelpful. When she approached the school for information, her daughter was expelled without reason. This incident occurred in October of last year. The authorities only began to take action once it gained attention on social media. When they visited the school to collect samples, only 2 staff members complied, while the principal refused. It is a disturbing situation that is still unfolding. Story 4. My country just went through a 14-year-long civil war, and we are trying to rebuild. However, the country is suffering from disunity. Story 5. It's okay for the most part. We have a housing crisis and the healthcare system is a bit troubled, but in the grand scheme of things, we don't have severe weather and no one is trying to go to war with us. Most people have a job and a fairly good life. Story 6. Vietnam. Everything is normal in our daily lives, but people are starting to get worried about the tariffs. There has been no immediate impact, though. I think people are beginning to spend less lately due to all the uncertainties. The general public here just wants to live in peace and save for their children's education. Story 7. I live in the outback of Australia. We are seeing and hearing a lot of behavior similar to that of former President Donald Trump. Local politicians are modeling their campaigns after him. It's honestly quite frightening. Story 8. South Africa, more than 30 years later, still faces the same corrupt politicians seeking to quickly loot the tax revenue and enrich themselves and their associates, while neglecting the struggles of their previously disadvantaged black compatriots. They continue to blame white people for the problems in the world. Infrastructure is being stripped and destroyed in plain sight, with no accountability from law enforcement. However, life goes on with the simple pleasures of having a barbecue and returning to work the next day. Story 9. Austria has incompetent leaders halting any real progress, as has been the tradition for decades. The far right is influenced by Russia and has become fans of Trump. Meanwhile, the far left debates whether it is racist to suggest that not every single person has the right to gain citizenship. The central left and central right are primarily concerned with who occupies which position in parliament and how they can extract as much money as possible from their roles. Otherwise, things aren't too bad. Story 10. Hello from Romania. Although it seems that things are improving, corruption is actually at an all-time high. It's evident, and the only option is to protest because the justice system is under their control. Our military is weak, and we have a conflict at the eastern border. We rank at the top in the European Union for teen pregnancy, illiteracy, alcohol consumption, inflation, human trafficking, online adult services, deaths from hospital-acquired infections, and other issues that I can't remember right now. Inflation continues to rise while housing costs are increasing, and it doesn't seem likely to slow down soon. Gas, electricity, and car insurance costs are all climbing due to the incompetence of the government and regulatory bodies, which prioritize their own financial gain and family employment in the system. Elections for president are approaching, and it will certainly be an eventful ride. The Corruption Coalition, Social Democratic Party, National Liberal Party, and Democratic Alliance of Hungarians in Romania is backing a candidate who has been out of politics for a decade. He and others attempted to usurp the presidency twice in what amounted to an attempted coup because they controlled everything except for the presidential administration. That's the final piece they needed for full control. They previously stripped the president of significant power, leaving only the leader of the military, the head of the Secret Service, and a foreign policy puppet. The extremist conservative candidate, closely tied to the Social Democratic Party, is known to have connections with Russian interests and has been barred from several countries. He took over from the candidate blocked by the Constitutional Court by first canceling the elections and then preventing him from running again. He vows to reinstate the previously blocked candidate once he gains power, and is a strong supporter of the Make America Great Again movement. The mayor of Bucharest has strong ties to the National Liberal Party and the Secret Service. He is intelligent and has initiated many positive projects in Bucharest, but personally, I don't believe he is fit to be president. He is more suitable as a prime minister. Another extremist with a focus on Make America Great Again, previously a prime minister, has proven to be corrupt and is a political chameleon, a deceitful individual who deserves to be imprisoned. The progressive female candidate was supposed to advance to the second round of elections against the aforementioned candidate responsible for the cancellation. However, her party, Save Romania Union, dropped her in favor of the mayor of Bucharest, which was done illegally according to the Electoral Commission, as candidates cannot support others outside their declared choice. A legal battle is ongoing, initially won by her but later appealed. She currently polls between 4% and 8%, a significant drop from the 18% she received in December. She appears to be the only candidate truly disconnected from the current regime, though she often speaks on topics she does not fully understand. The other candidates are insignificant unless someone like Călin Georgescu suddenly rises from 1% to 25% overnight. The parliament is in disarray, with 30% being extremists, 50% from the old guard, and only 20% genuinely trying to bring about positive change. Story 11. We were the most democratic country in the Arab world, but now we have reverted to dictatorship in Tunisia. Story 12. Our government is preparing a plan after the president has decided to place tariffs on our exports. Other than that, it is just about Anzac Day here, and I am preparing to march for the first time in a parade since I returned from Afghanistan in 2008 because our ally decided to wage a war on terror. Story 13. We, Australia, have our federal elections next month, which is interesting. The tariff situation will impact us, some directly and some indirectly, since China is our largest trading partner, accounting for a third of our exports, but it is not clear exactly how much. Other than that, nothing particularly exciting is happening here. We are doing quite well, but I am sure some will disagree because people tend to focus on negative aspects. Story 14. Presidential election in a month. Hopefully, we can finally get a normal president since the current one is obstructing progress. The previous administration has been blocking any serious cleanup efforts from the current government after the conservative takeover 9 years ago. Story 15. Gun violence and grenade bombings are increasing weekly in Brussels. We do not sell guns like in the United States. Story 16. I am frustrated with the situation in Hungary. The government is attempting to ban protests under the pretense of protecting children while blaming the LGBTQ+ community. Meanwhile, prices are increasing once more, putting significant strain on Hungarian-owned small businesses due to rising taxes. Our healthcare system is struggling, there is a shortage of teachers, and schools are frequently closing. Yet, the government continues to fund rural pubs, supporting those with alcohol addictions while neglecting to provide any assistance to women affected by domestic violence. Story 17. The democratically elected president of our country viewed an opponent as a threat. Initially, he made his college diploma invalid to prevent him from running in the next election, and then he imprisoned him for corruption within 24 hours. This occurred despite the fact that his diploma had been questioned since day one, and that the corruption accusations stemmed from anonymous whistleblowers who based their claims solely on eavesdropping and gossip. First, college students took to the streets, followed by protests from people across the nation. Then the government decided to relocate dissenting teachers from established high schools, prompting high school students to begin protesting as well. I believe they aim to create a rebellious generation for the future. Story 18. I am Canadian. Things are going well despite dealing with the ongoing threats. We are having an election, and it is looking promising. Story 19. Brit here. It's pretty disappointing, actually. We have two groups of conservatives now, the blue Tories and the red Tories. Essentially, it's a duopoly that is just as bad as each other. When we're not dealing with the fallout from these individuals, we are faced with other right-wing extremists like Reform UK, which isn't even a party. It's essentially a company. Farage spends more time in the United States courting donors instead of doing his job as an elected member of parliament for Clacton. Meanwhile, we have GB News, which claims it's not a news channel but rather an entertainment channel. Nonetheless, it still features politicians on daily programs spouting their vile lies and misinformation. The Blue Tories have taken control of the BBC, so we now have a state propaganda outlet, and we are legally obligated to pay for it. Our state energy market means we pay the highest energy bills in Europe. Our telecommunications industry lags behind other developed countries, and our mainstream media is predominantly owned by right-wing billionaires, with the exception of only 2 newspapers. Our public services have been privatized so that wealthy individuals can profit at the expense of the public while providing increasingly substandard services. In the case of water services, they just dump waste directly into our rivers. Our National Health Service has been squeezed dry by successive conservative governments since Thatcher to the point that it is not just on its knees. It is on its face. Our civil rights are eroded daily, with facial recognition systems being rolled out in Cardiff and soon in every town in the UK, despite councils lacking enough funds for basic services like garbage collection. Meanwhile, thousands of people are unemployed and increasingly pushed into poverty or bankruptcy. I could continue about how greed, corruption, and apathy have systematically destroyed the UK from within. But who is going to take action about it? Story 20. Originally from the United Kingdom, but my country is now Zanzibar, where I have been for about 14 years. Last night, 2 individuals attempted to steal underground electricity cables, causing a significant portion of the island to lose power while repairs are being made. We are currently in the rainy season. It is quiet with fewer tourists at this time of year. Story 21. Great and terrible simultaneously in the Netherlands. Yes, there are various significant advances in science, and companies like ASML have been growing. We have a lot of influence around the world. However, the housing market is challenging. The average house price is around 500,000 euros, fluctuating in several cities. Rent prices are too high. I have been registered for social housing for about 2 years, but still, when I apply for a house, hundreds of people are already waiting ahead of me. Prices in supermarkets have increased over the last few years, more so than in neighboring countries. In fact, the supermarket chain Albert Heijn sometimes has lower prices for the exact same products sourced from the same country, including the Netherlands and Belgium. This indicates that some prices are artificially inflated. I don't understand how, despite all the issues we face in our country with housing, we are still accepting migrants and asylum seekers. City and town leaderships are being pressured to find more housing, but sometimes this is no longer feasible. That might sound like a bigoted or right-wing opinion, but I see it in my city that I and thousands of other people are unable to find a house. Therefore, I find it irresponsible that we continue to accept people from outside the city, and sometimes they even receive preferential treatment in obtaining social housing. Moreover, city governments were frustrated that they could not give preference to individuals from outside the city, which infuriates me because thousands of citizens are living with their parents in their late 20s or 30s, or are in unbearable situations needing housing. Sometimes it feels like they want to keep their own citizens struggling while rolling out the red carpet for newcomers. Story 22. I am content here in Canada. I do not let the news affect me because nothing lasts forever. Prices may rise, but I will survive. Story 23. Nothing ever happens. Everything is very expensive. The housing crisis is a bit better, but still challenging. We also have to fund our non-existent army of 1,000 troops again. However, I still love living in this little village. I returned from university last week and saw all my childhood friends. It was a blast. Story 24. Ireland here. Apart from the housing crisis and the sudden influx of Americans who now want to flee to Europe and have chosen Ireland purely because we speak English, everything is fine. There is a sense of consumer caution. We have had unusually good weather this spring, but the rain is back. Story 25. Peru is in a state of panic and fear. Crime rates are increasing, and the entire country is under a state of emergency with the army deployed, although their effectiveness is questionable. The president has an approval rating of only 5%. She is widely disliked. Additionally, there have been significant medical emergencies due to a mistake involving a saline solution that contaminated products with an unknown substance, resulting in 6 fatalities. A school food program caused severe food poisoning for hundreds of children, and the food served is unrecognizable. I could elaborate further, but my point is made. I am considering leaving for Spain to continue my studies in a medical program at a university abroad. Story 26. It is unfortunate that there is a conflict in my country, Sudan. In Sudan, there is a war between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces. The Rapid Support Forces are a group that aims to take control of Sudan, and they are supported by Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and the United States. These 3 countries provide them with weapons to commit acts of violence, including murder, sexual assault, and theft of property. The Sudanese armed forces are the ones trying to stop the Rapid Support Forces from committing these acts. Additionally, the United States tries to portray the situation in Sudan as a civil war, which is misleading. Story 27. In Malta, there is corruption, ineffective opposition, a lack of competition for the current government, uncontrollable traffic, and long wait times at clinics and hospitals. Just another day, I guess. Could be worse. Story 28. Pretty frustrating, to be honest. I'm in Alberta, Canada, and for those who care, we are desperate at this moment to avoid being influenced by American politics. The overwhelming impact is quite distressing. Story 29. Great here in Canada. The election is underway, allowing the people to choose a new government. Democracy is still alive and well here, but we must be careful not to follow the path of our neighbors to the south. Story 30. Spain is fine. The economy is rising at a rapid pace, unemployment is steadily decreasing, and living standards are good thanks to a robust social framework. If you listen to certain right-wing groups, they would portray it as rampant immigrant crime, a corrupt government always on the brink of collapse, and an oppressive tax system, but statistics show a different reality. There are still many problems, starting with a dire housing situation, unemployment remaining above average, several corruption scandals, wealth concentrated in a few hands, and conflicting agendas slowing down necessary reforms. However, as a 50-year-old who has lived through all of Spain's democratic era, these issues are not as significant compared to the darker days of the past. We have somewhat successfully integrated a significant increase in the immigrant population. Crime is low, there is no terrorism, and the far right mostly siphons votes from the conservatives. Politics are stable despite the constant doomsaying from the right. There is certainly room for improvement, but I look outside and can't help but feel content and optimistic about the future. That is, unless a major economic downturn occurs and the subsequent backlash allows right-wing groups to win elections allied with the far right, forcing us back to lower taxes, austerity, and ongoing culture wars. Story 31. Pretty good. We are coming to the end of our long Easter weekend, where many of us were able to stay home, enjoy drinks, have barbecues, and go fishing. Interest rates are decreasing, and aside from our superannuation balances taking a hit due to the new administration in the United States, life is pretty good. Story 32. Life is all right. Job hunting in the tech field is not enjoyable. I am considering whether to give up since I just passed my Cisco Certified Network Associate certification last October. To be honest, I worry that I will be stuck in a dead-end job forever. Story 33. Energy bills are rapidly rising, and rent has increased twice as much as my pay rise over the last 3 years. Food costs more each month. Overall, it could definitely be worse, but it has also been better. Story 34. Elections are coming soon. Most of the senatorial candidates are absolute clowns. Our vice president appears unstable and has initiated a vendetta against our president. If I weren't a citizen of this country, I would find the situation quite entertaining. Story 35. It has never been worse here in the Netherlands, but that still means we are doing pretty well overall. Story 36. There was a pileup on the Bruce Highway in Australia caused by a man who carjacked someone and then shot another person at the crash scene, resulting in the death of a young woman. Such incidents are very rare here. It is tragic. Story 37. As an American, this post is refreshing. I'm tired of waking up to constant negativity every day. At least I can scroll and find something besides the loss of rights, Does anyone have advice on the best country to move to as a black, trans, and queer individual? Story 38. Waiting for our new coalition government to revive the economy. One can dream, right? It's certainly better than having authoritarian leaders in power. Story 39. From the United States. It can still be unpredictable at times, but strangers hold doors, people rescue dogs, and neighbors plant gardens just to give away vegetables. I put ketchup on a hot dog today without starting a civil war. Honestly, there are miracles everywhere. Hope is alive. Story 40. As a Canadian, I am terrified but slightly less so than I was a year ago. Last year, we were on track to elect our own version of Donald Trump, who wanted to kill our public broadcaster, reduce federal workers, ban everything that isn't Christian enough, and target immigrants. However, thanks to the election of Joe Biden, things have changed, and we are likely looking at a better prime minister remaining in office. Still, I feel that the rise of the far right will eventually lead Canada down the same dark path that the United States is heading toward. Story 41. Elections are approaching. In my opinion, no candidate is worth half a vote. The online community is expressing outrage about how everyone should vote for the Liberal candidate who does everything in their power not to get elected. My rural family is passionately discussing voting for the individual who attacked a religious figure with a fire extinguisher. Russia is repeatedly entering our airspace to provoke us, but we are not going to call for assistance from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization over a plane like others may. We are facing a bird flu outbreak and are trying to contain it as soon as possible. Overall, the situation is challenging as usual. Story 42. I'm an American in Bahrain right now. It's going pretty well. It's hot here and the food is cheap. I went to the dentist yesterday, and it was a lovely experience. I don't know about the political climate here, so it's nice not to hear about it. Story 43. My country's politicians are rather docile. That being said, we proved this year that we still reject our fringe culture war politicians as annoying whenever they appear, and that makes me proud. Story 44. The politicians are fighting over religion and language, just like the radicalized masses, while everyone ignores development and education. Story 45. In Spain, although politically I feel we are not falling into fascism anytime soon, I hope, life is becoming increasingly expensive, and many cannot afford to rent, let alone buy a place. However, I would argue that it is a good place to live. I live in Sweden, which has crippling gang violence but better worker protection. I do not recommend it if you need sunshine. Story 46. We were supposed to have more protests regarding what happened in Kokani, but they only lasted about 3 to 5 days and people quickly forgot about them. It is unfortunate. Story 47. Czech's local news. Petrol bombers attack police during a dissident Republican parade. Some families feel unsafe after a group puts up flags on lampposts. Easter parades held to commemorate the 1916 Rising. It's just another regular day in Northern Ireland. Story 48. Not bad. Uruguay. We have a new president, and although the right-leaning president was different from the rest of the world, I'm quite happy for the left to be back considering the state of the world. It is still too expensive to live here, but somehow things seem static. We still have the same problems as before, but I'm counting that as a win considering the current situation. Story 49. We are in the midst of an election that will determine if we slide into fascism like our neighbors to the south. Our housing crisis is severe, due to both parties abandoning public housing over the past 40 years. Our healthcare system is being dismantled in favor of a private system, which is already a disaster for everyone except those profiting from it. But other than that, all is well. Story 50. The government is attempting to influence our election, and if it succeeds, I will leave the country. Additionally, wealthy individuals are continuing their practices and supporting politicians who do not align with their interests. Story 51. In the UK, as nobody seems to care, thousands of disabled people are set to lose their incomes, homes, and lives over the next few years. Here is a description of someone who will lose all benefits and be expected to work full-time in the UK under planned welfare reforms. Cannot cook without prompting. Cannot eat unsupervised. Needs assistance to wash their lower body. needs assistance to dress their lower body, requires supervision to use the toilet, nonverbal and uses an alternative communication device, cannot engage with people without prompting, cannot make their own complex budgeting decisions. Story 52, UK here. Labour made some missteps, mainly with farmers and benefits changes, but given the difficult situation they were left with, it could be worse. I can afford a cup of tea and a fried egg sandwich, so life could be worse. Story 53, Israel is quite good, if I may say so. Although we experience rockets waking us up once every few days, we have gotten used to it. Overall, things are pretty good. Story 54, despite the chaos here, overall it's really good to live here. I don't remember the United States as I never even wanted to visit. That's why I chose Europe and Asia to go backpacking and get out of the Americas for a bit, although I really want to go to Guatemala. Story 55. For decades, we balanced our relationship between the United States and China. Then, Trump pushed us into China's embrace. She came and signed numerous deals. It was overwhelming. Story 56. I cannot wait for next year's election. Our government is so inefficient that I am surprised they accomplish anything. Story 57. Well, we just discovered a new national sport. Complaining about the weather while doing absolutely nothing to fix the things we can control. Great vibes though. Story 58. Mostly good. Not a lot of significant news happening here, other than that our upcoming chancellor isn't likely to make much of an impact. Story 59. In Germany, we are going to have one of the worst presidents in a while. He needs to form a coalition with our Center Social Party, so I hope they will keep him in check, but they have a history of failing. Story 60. Corruption is rampant, with literal terrorists in the government, and judges simply follow the leader's directives. Story 61. Housing crisis, record homelessness, inflation, and shrinkflation. Governments are refusing to accept that monoculture tree planting is not a sufficient way to rewild. The usual challenges persist. Story 62. Remember Vitaly? He is detained here and awaiting trial. He is not going to be deported, and he will likely spend a minimum of 5 years because he upset influential people in an area controlled by some of the most powerful families in our country. The president even made a personal statement about it. Not through a press conference or a spokesperson. He made it clear that Vitaly is in serious trouble. Additionally, it happened during election season when politicians are looking for any opportunity to boost their popularity. However, I feel like the importance of the president of the entire country making it clear that unacceptable behavior will not be tolerated doesn't hit as hard. There's also a lot of negativity surrounding our former president, who is detained by the International Criminal Court and awaiting trial for alleged human rights violations during his presidency. But, you win some, you lose some. Story 63. I have 2 homes. My native Australia and my current home, Finland. Australia is good, actually. I was worried the right-wing party might return in the upcoming election, but their campaign has faltered, so everything is looking positive. Finland is fair. Spring has arrived, and the sun is shining again. The job market is currently challenging. So many people are struggling. Story 64. Labour is doing a lot of good things, but their communication strategy is ineffective. The constant attacks from the right-wing press do not help. They have made some correct, albeit difficult, decisions. However, I disagree with Reeves and believe we should increase national insurance or income tax to help reduce the national debt. Story 65. Canada held a federal election on April 28th. Advanced polls were open from Friday to Monday during Easter weekend, and turnout was extremely high. I voted on Sunday. Hopefully, the United States will not invade Canada before the election. Story 66. Great. Due to high payroll costs, a company in the United States fired employees and hired me instead. Story 67. Normal, good, and slightly worrisome. Our government, which can be described as early 2000s conservatives, has done what they usually do, undo most successful initiatives from the previous government. Now, they are trying to enforce conservative ideals, reducing social systems and limiting protections for employees. Their classic antisocial agenda. So they have run into resistance from the public and non-compliant professionals and are a bit stuck, and will remain so until the election. Otherwise, life is good, the economy is growing, and cities are being upgraded. We are dealing with growing inequality like everywhere else. The housing situation is slowly heating up toward an upcoming crisis. But spring is coming, and the food and weather are delightful. The U.S. import tax situation is quite opportune for us, as we supply certain irreplaceable high-tech items to the U.S. We will now significantly increase costs to the U.S. and expand into other markets. But it feels like another funeral. After the UK distanced itself from Europe, now the US appears to be distancing itself from the West. We need to focus on growth and ignore those self-important individuals. Story 68. We finally have a president who looks like he should represent our country. Please search for Miloš Zeman and see who represented our republic for 8 years. Then there is Petr Pavel, who is often the subject of edits and memes. Story 69. Honestly, it's a mix. Some things are getting better, like technology and access to information, but other aspects, such as the economy and trust in leadership, can feel shaky. People are adapting, though. There is a lot of resilience demonstrated. Story 70. Luxembourg is mostly fine. Another salary indexation is coming up, which is good. House prices are still high, but that is nothing new. Everything else is as calm as ever. Story 71. I narrowly avoided a far-right leader here in Austria. Yep, that Austria. Otherwise, I can't complain, to be honest. It's still a quiet and easy life for now. I hope that doesn't change drastically. Story 72. Our government is cutting benefits and supporting the wealthy. Our institutions appear to be undermining democracy and fostering anti-white sentiment. Our criminal courts have determined that white men should receive harsher sentences than other groups in order to improve incarceration rates for minorities. This is making the far-right party seem appealing to many, which may guarantee them a victory in the upcoming elections. Story 73. Pretty good. Thanks. After watching the situation in the United States, I'm quite satisfied with our political system. It's definitely not perfect, but at least it isn't completely unhinged, with the exception of Clive Palmer. Story 74. It isn't so bad. The current government is normal, and the press and comedy writers are really struggling to find material. Satire is mostly aimed at those across the pond, and oh boy. Story 75. It is stable enough where not everything is in chaos. We are nearing a critical point if things do not change because our economy is not strong enough to keep the public sector in a good position, especially now that we have joined the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and are being asked to increase our military spending. Jobs in the public sector need to be more attractive with better pay to address the lack of personnel, especially as the baby boomer generation is retiring. Story 76. The price of the dollar rose almost 100% in 3 months before talks with the United States to stabilize the market. Everything is sanctioned, and the religious extremists along with the morality police commit crimes daily. Meanwhile, those in government are exploiting the situation while the country suffers. Young people and protesters face execution within days, and thousands of percent inflation over the past decade has pushed the majority of the population below the poverty line. But we still have internet, so that's something, I guess. Story 77. After a 14-year civil war, the atmosphere was tense and gloomy one day and bright the next, generally creating a sense of uncertainty. Story 78. Not too bad, if I'm being honest. The weather is great, prices are fine, and there are no major government issues. The only concern is the potential loss of our pharmaceutical industry, which is a significant employer. Story 79. We are performing well in the sports category, having won both a tennis tournament and a bicycle race yesterday. This is great news for both participants. It was a pleasant Easter Sunday filled with happy moments. Story 80. I was looking for my country, but I don't think I saw one. Here's a summary of how my lovely country is doing. First of all, the government signed a martial law act allowing military forces to assume governmental positions without resigning from their military roles. There was a similar act in the past that caused national chaos involving a mysterious shooter and widespread racism. I just hope it won't happen again. Our currency is weakening drastically, even before the recent decision on tariffs, and it has spiked even more due to that decision. So far, the government is doing nothing other than making press conferences that only clarify the situation, but nothing positive comes of it. Our purchasing power is at an all-time low because people want to save more money now. The government implemented what they called financial efficiency, but they cut funding for major and crucial aspects of the country, like education. By the way, our teachers are paid very low salaries each month. Some don't even receive $10 a month. Recently, there have been cases of medical misconduct where doctors or residents have assaulted their patients. And well, there is much more to come. It's exhausting to open the news every day now. Story 81. It is election season here where we have to choose between a candidate and a less competent option. Additionally, the football games are on, and my club has forgotten how to play effectively. Story 82. Apart from the fact that our Prime Minister hasn't accomplished much in 6 months except covering up misconduct, everything is mostly fine, and maybe we won't have a fascist candidate in 2 years. Story 83. We have an ineffective government that is not accomplishing much. However, aside from that, things are just fine. Story 84. South African checking in. Load shedding is driving everyone crazy. Imagine your electricity just disappearing for hours each day. But hey, we're resilient. Story 85. Living in Finland right now, and honestly, I can't complain. Free healthcare actually works. I took my daughter to the doctor yesterday and didn't pay anything. Additionally, my maternity leave was over a year with full pay. Story 86. Canada. We are in the middle of an election. It is calm. There is no fuss or extreme poll observers. Just citizens making a rational decision. Story 87. Someone is discussing invading us while we have an election, but fortunately, our aspiring leader from that country essentially copied that leader's strategy and even received that leader's endorsement, which has driven many people away from that candidate's campaign. Story 88. The upcoming election is likely to be one of the most significant in a long time, especially regarding the management of our relationship with the United States. Story 89. The current government is the most incompetent in the history of this country, which is both a blessing and a curse, as they are also too incompetent to cause significant damage. Mostly, it results in a lot of inaction and endless bickering. Meanwhile, this country is gradually declining. Many construction projects, including those aimed at combating climate change, are stalled due to long-ignored environmental regulations. We are now limited in our ability to address these issues, as many construction efforts are blocked by law. The quality of education is declining, literacy rates are falling, and grocery prices are soaring. Housing prices are also extremely high. While conditions are still considered good by global standards, we are slipping. Story 90. Chinese here. Like those same old days, jobs are harder to find. Real estate is collapsing, and I am an architecture student who will graduate this year. I feel lost about the future and have no idea whether to pursue a master's degree or seek a job. Story 91. We are about to have an election, and I am spending this week working in the most conservative province in the country. Coming from a much less conservative area, this has been quite a mind trip. Story 92. My country, which occupies my homeland, is in poor condition. Anything happening in the United States, where I am from, is 100 times worse. The only reason people are not being deported is that no one wants to come to this undesirable place. Story 93. This was a great question to ask as an American to gain insight into the political climates in other countries. It puts things into perspective that we're not the only country with political turmoil and that our issues are influencing other nations. Story 94. Our negotiations were fluctuating between China, Russia, and Trump while creating tensions with Europe. Trump has now effectively given an ultimatum to reduce pro-China and pro-Russia policies or face higher tariffs. Story 95. The largest right-wing party is openly supporting Trump. We have parliamentary elections next year. Their leader congratulated Trump on his victory in 2020 before the results were known. Story 96. The UK Supreme Court has clarified its definition of a woman, which will likely have positive implications for the transgender community. Story 97. The cost of living is increasing, the housing market is struggling, and global factors are making things more difficult for many countries due to unrealistic tariffs on goods. Story 98. We have an election in a week, and everyone is convinced that if the side they are not supporting wins, the whole country will be destroyed. Story 99. My family and I just returned from a cruise that my wife and I planned for a year. This was the first time my wife and children left the country, and they had a wonderful experience. It was a great week last week. Story 100. Not all that great. Racism has become more acceptable, and the dismantling of the welfare system continues. Story 101. Seeing others discuss their struggles makes complaints about Trump seem selfish. Yes, we have to deal with Trump, but nothing has changed from last year to this year. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.